After my sister and I took a dive into our childhood watching Yu-Gi-Oh! GX Season 1, I then continued that dive into my childhood watching Season 2, and then I wanted to make a breakdown for the channel, and here I am talking about Season 2. Hello everybody, and welcome back to another video. If you are new here, my name is Kyle. I am your guy with too many YouTube channels. So, I got a huge rush of nostalgia watching Season 1 because I have not watched it since I was a kid. As I've gotten older, I've watched a little bit of Season 3, but still not nearly enough to, kind of remember it. Again, I got rushed with so many good feelings. I just wanted to continue on just watching Season 2, man. It all started with my sister and I. We were trying to find some childhood shows that we love to show my daughter, who obviously is not going to like this show. She's not even 1 year old, but you know what? There's some cool music, and, Jaden's awesome. My sister and I kind of wanted to watch it, so we put it on. She didn't like it at all, but I continued with the show. So like I said, I continued on watching it, man. I just continued on watching it, and there was so much that I remember, but so much that I actually forgot about, man. And we're definitely going to Season 3, and I might even give the original series another watch, guys. So like we've been doing with these videos, I'm going to be breaking down the episodes. Well, not nearly every episode, because there's quite a bit of filler over here. We're going to break it down point by point, plot, talk about what I liked, what I didn't like about it. And for this season in general, guys, it was definitely the weakest of them all, but still, something about just, the laid back high school life I really liked. All the episodes of just getting to know the new guys and, just the regular duels in general. That was all really fun. But once we actually got into the storyline with Sartorius, the Society of Light, while it was interesting, but even I remember back when I watched this when I was a kid, man, I was not that interested in the Society of Light storyline. Sartorius was not a cool villain. I did not care for the entire Destiny talk. Aster was good. The storyline with Zane was a little bit weird, but there were some ups, there were some downs over here. But I think that I liked the first little bit of it more than I liked the rest of the season. But I know once we get into Season 3, that was by far my favorite, and I cannot wait to talk about that one. But like I said, man, it was there was definitely some strong points in the season. So we're going to break it down for you from the beginning, of course, starting the brand new year. Dr. Crowler is the temporary headmaster, which is really fun. Him and Bonaparte had some great moments together, and I just forgot, man, I forgot what these old shows and how, deep they went into it. Crowler and Bonaparte insulting each other, peak comedy, calling him shorty, calling him vertically challenged, things like that, and I'm like, oh my god, you can't say stuff like that anymore. And it was something that I laughed at back in Season 1 was, they were talking about creaming each other, it's so weird to say today, but it's just how it used to be, right? So anyways, diving into the actual first duel that we see, we are introduced to Aster, and then little bit of Sartorius as well. Again, Sartorius being all mysterious. And for me, and I don't know if anybody else felt the same way, it just did not hit. Aster, on the other hand, I liked more as time's gone on. I don't recall, because again, it's been so long since I watched this, man. Aster, I liked, but I don't recall if I've liked him right away, because obviously we've seen a lot of character development from him. He ended up actually beating Jaden, which was a shock to everybody, and he just completely underperformed. He used a deck that didn't even matter, right? It was the new guy using the elemental heroes. In between this and what I'm going to be talking about, there's a few kind of filler episodes. We're still introduced to what everybody's been going on. Cyrus is trying to get into Raw Yellow. We had the introduction to Hasselberry, which I liked Hasselberry as a character. I remember I really anything dinosaur related. It got insanely cringe, and the ending to this season with Hasselberry made absolutely no sense, but I liked him. I thought he was funny. The idea of him just constantly fighting with Cyrus, that was all really fun to watch. But we actually have a little bit of more of an introduction into what's going to be happening with the season once we actually get into Zane's storyline. I was interested in Zane's storyline until he ended up getting into the ultimate edgelord character. I liked Zane a lot more in Season 1 with how he was. He was respectful. He was the best, and nobody could take him on. He knew he was the best. He was confident in himself, and he kind of smugly had fun, in what he was doing. I didn't like him just embracing this I don't know how else to describe it, but an edgelord. They completely changed the way that Zane was. I did not really like that. But anyways, Zane gets into the pro tournament. He starts losing over and over again. Aster just comes in and Aster dummies him. And it's funny knowing how all of these decks perform too, because the Destiny heroes, what are you going to do with them? They don't exactly work together all that well, especially you need some support that Aster does not have. And Zane arguably has the best toolkit. So if this was any sort of real life scenario over here, Zane would dummy Aster over and over and over again. But anyway, sometime in between like that, he ended up facing Jaden. I know that I just said he ended up, Aster beat both Jaden and he beat Zane, but the problem is we didn't know that Sartorius' spell and seeing the light was affecting Jaden, because what Jaden was supposed to do when he lost was supposed to see the light. He was supposed to get brainwashed and become part of the Society of Light, but Jaden is the character who can conquer destiny, so it almost worked. He had the inability to see everything. Everything kind of looked white to him, but he was left with no purpose there, and he was weirdly okay with that, you know, leaving the academy. It just, everybody was worried about him. He ended up just like flat out becoming depressed. So because Jaden was supposed to start seeing the light, apparently it wasn't good enough. I don't know if the goal was to just beat him down again, but Chaz ended up getting recruited. Again, Chaz still, just like in Season 1, he shined in this season. He was hilarious. I know there's a lot of people talking about them changing the voice for Chaz. I didn't notice it. I'd have to hear like a side-by-side. I still thought he was hilarious. Chaz It Up is hilarious. The way he's insulting people is hilarious. Like, they did a very, very good job with this character. So Chaz was one of the first ones to get brainwashed into the Society of Light. And I guess he was tasked to go take care of Jaden. I don't really know that, but regardless, he was he was the first to turn into a zombie. He wanted to go and take over Jaden too, but Jaden was nowhere to be found. Jaden ended up taking off, and so long the academy. Like, it only gets weirder from there, because then Jaden all of a sudden ends up, he's on a boat by himself. He sees a shooting star. The shooting star comes down. He wakes up in a strange place, and this is where he meets all of the Neospatians. Now for this part, okay? I personally don't really like the Neospatians and the Neospace. Maybe, like, I don't know, man, it seemed iconic. Everybody has, like, you know, their ace monster with them. I was a big fan of the Flame Wingman, that being the ace, just like we've seen with the Dark Magician, the Blue Eyes. Like, everybody has had their main kind of beat stick. I thought Flame Wingman was perfect for that, and I really didn't like switching it to Neos, and I thought it was a little bit weird that they could all talk, to be honest with you. Excuse me, I don't know if that came through the microphone. It's going to be so stupid if it did. I ended up just spitting on my screen a little bit. Sorry about that. Regardless, I don't like that they switched here. I don't like that he's talking to everybody, but we kind of figured out what's going on over here. There is light and there's dark, and the light's trying to take over now. It's an evil force. Sartorius has been corrupted. They need to take care of everything, and now the deck has the power of Neos within it, so he is a brand new, you know, force to be dealt with. But again, kind of like what we're talking about with all of the Destiny cards, like, the Neospatians, they don't work. They're straight up bad. And you know what? We had some, like, fun moments with, you know, Jaden kind of having that learning curve over there, you know, like, everything going back to the hand after, you know, they can only stay out for so long. You need Neospace. I liked all of that, to be honest with you, but to change so much of what worked so well in Season 1, for me personally, it just didn't hit the same. I liked Davion. I liked Burstinatrix. I liked Sparkman. I liked Thunder Giant. But I also understand that, you know, for business purposes and the entire reason that the show's over here, you need to continue on adding more to such a cool character being Jaden. I just personally didn't really like the way that it worked. And like I said at the beginning, I thought Sartorius and the Society of Light, I thought it was all a little bit weak. I had more fun watching, like, Hasselberry and Cyrus go at it. I had more fun watching Chaz and chase after Alexis, you know? That is really where I found it, the strength in the season. And, like, honestly, Crowler was probably the one who took over the season. Made me laugh more than anything like that. We're going to get into him with Pegasus. Like, that was peak comedy. But in the meantime, while Jaden is, like, making his entire way back, we have two different storylines, okay? We have the one where Crowler and Bonaparte are just trying to take down Slifer Red, which, again, them two were great. Them trying to think all of these, like, make all of these different deals. It just didn't end up working. Crowler calling Bonaparte vertically challenged. Again, like, I loved all of that. What I didn't really love was the entire storyline, like we talked about with Zane, okay? We get a little bit more of a deep dive into what Zane's up to, and he's been fired. Nobody cares about him anymore. This prospect is gone, and he's, like, down in the dumps. And he gets into, like, I don't know how else to describe it, man. Like, it's going to sound weird, but I can only think of it as, like, some masochistic BDSM type thing where he, like, wears a shock collar and, like, really needs to feel pain in order to, like, electrify him and get him, like, going again to actually, like, not want to get shocked with a collar around his neck. So he has to actually win and accomplish his tasks. I don't like that. I thought it was just dumb. I don't know. He wore all black. He was this, like, major edgelord, you know, got into the power of the Cyberdarks. There was a whole weird thing with that, too. Him just finding Shepard. It was his birthright. Like, I didn't like all of it. Again, You're doing the same thing what you did with Jaden with something that worked so well, that being all of the heroes. And now we're introduced Neospace into it. You do the same thing with Zane, something that's so cool, works perfectly well with all of the Cyber cards, and then you take that and introduce Cyber Dark into that. Cyber Dark doesn't work. Cyber Dark versus Cyber. Cyber Dark will lose every single time. It just does not work. Everything new that was kind of introduced did not work. Honestly, out of everything new over here, and I'm just ballparking this off the top of my head. I could be totally wrong about this. It's either Hasselberry or Sartorius. Like, they arguably had the strongest, they arguably had the strongest archetype. I'm talking with everybody, like, fixing and changing things about them, but we didn't really see much of it. Like, we saw Sartorius in action a couple times. The Arcana Force was cool. The Hasselberry, yeah, I think it might be Hasselberry, actually. I don't know what Bastion had going on. We barely saw him. I'd have to really sit down and think about that one, to be honest with you. But again, Zane ended up just, accepting the pain and all of a sudden made his way back onto the top. This guy's back into the pro tournament. He's absolutely destroying everybody. But in the meantime, Jaden's making his way back. He ends up interrupting, the duel with Bonaparte, Crowler, Alexis. They're, fighting for the dorm again. And he has to interrupt and he has to take on Aster. The rematch that we really, really wanted to see. And Aster didn't really want to participate in, tearing anything down, but Sartorius kind of had him brainwashed. He was believing in Sartorius, like, hey, I sense danger. You need to do this. And then he's like, okay, I trust you. You're my mentor. Sartorius has never led me wrong, but Sartorius is being controlled by some evil force, right? We also learned a little bit about Aster's backstory, and that being with Dreadmaster. I used to think that was so cool, by the way, Dreadmaster. So his father created the entire archetype, and he either got robbed or he got killed. I don't remember which it was, but now Aster is using everything to get revenge and find his father's killer, and the dude is just filled with so much rage and is looking to find his dad's killer, although I don't, the chances of that happening are so slim, especially if your dad died when you were a kid. After a couple lengthy episodes, Jaden ended up getting the one-up over on Aster. I don't know what ended up clicking into Aster, but Aster ended up actually questioning what Sartorius is up to. Like, he said that he has something to hide from him. It didn't really... maybe I'm just having a blank on that. I don't know why Aster started questioning things. I don't really remember it, but regardless, he was starting to question the motives of Sartorius, and, Jaden ended up getting through to him a little bit, made him a little bit happier. Jaden's just that great guy. In the meantime, we are going through a little bit more filler. We have the match between Crowler and Bonaparte. Hilarious. Those two constantly going at it. The horrible insults they're throwing at each other. Peak trash talk. Old Xbox 360 style. We love to see that. That was awesome. And other than that, Chaz was dominating everybody. And he was getting everybody over into the society light. Everybody's starting to wear light over here. Everybody's becoming a brainwashed, mindless zombie. What's weird is, like, our main cast didn't seem to really care about it. Like, everybody's actively becoming brainwashed. There's this new building that ends up going up. They're all living there. I like that they all kind of adapt Chaz's attitude. Like, Alexis started just, like, straight up insulting people, kind of like Chaz would. I kind of like that in general. Like, whenever, and this is what I said at the beginning, whenever Crowler, Bonaparte, or Chaz were part of, like, any scene, it was just funny to me. But then we continue on a little bit more with a little bit of a nostalgia trip, I will say. But before that, actually, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention one thing. We had Hasselberry take on Sartorius, and then that ridiculous storyline that I was talking of at the beginning. Like, I like Hasselberry. I like everything about him. I liked his addition to the show. Hasselberry is an awesome character. But the fact that he broke his leg as a kid, and I guess they couldn't find any human bones, so they ended up using a fossil to get into him and having dino DNA. I hated that. It was ridiculous. I've always thought that was ridiculous. We learned that about him, but he gets dummied by Sartorius, okay? But then we take a nice trip down memory lane. It was almost perfect until we run into the grandpa, which was really cool to see, right? Really, really cool to go back and see the shop, the grandpa, Battle City. All of it was really cool, but they absolutely ruined the character of the grandfather. He's just this old guy with dementia going, hey, Sonny. Like, I just thought it was, again, there are a lot of things in this show was, like, don't get me wrong, like, I know that I'm picking this apart a little bit. I still really enjoyed myself watching this show, man, but there was quite a few things that, like, I'm like, why did you do that? Because the rest of it was great. I liked the tag match. I liked going back up to that building. I still liked exploring Battle City. I liked the callback to everything that we saw, even going into the dimension where Serena was. All of that was really, really cool. The match with Serena was awesome. Like, or Sabrina, whatever her name was, like, all of that was great. It was nostalgic. It forwarded the story. And of course, shocker, Sartorius isn't actually being evil. He's being controlled by a force. This is where we ended up learning it. I know I've already talked about this. But after all that, we continue on with a little more filler. And actually, I really like this filler. And it's crazy because I liked the filler more than I actually liked the solid storyline, because we had the introduction of Alice. The guys ended up fighting over her. That was actually really funny, the way that they handled that, and just like completely 180ing it, just like being the nicest girl in the world and then just absolutely hating them. That was all funny, the way they handled that. And then we also had, his name kind of rhymed, but I only remember Bob. His name was Bob, the game show guy. Everybody was clowning on this dude, and Jaden was absolutely like loving everything that was happening. He's like, dude, this is so cool. Everything's a game show over here. Jaden was like the only one who loved it, which was funny, and then everybody else hating on him. The dude was also obsessed with Alexis, so he's like, oh, she's watching me. She must like what I'm doing over here. She thinks my game show's cool. And then you cut over to Alexis, and she's like, wow, this guy is the biggest loser I've ever seen in my entire life. All of that was great. It only got added to that when Chaz came to the party and just like continued on with the insults that he was throwing. I like the filler over here. There was one thing about the filler that I didn't like, though. We get into this stupid storyline with Bastion. Again, they ruined his character completely, where he's like, they don't want me. Nobody accepts me. Am I not good enough for anybody else? Why doesn't the Society of Light want me? That was stupid, and they completely killed Bastion's character, and I think they killed him moving forward, too. I don't recall exactly what he was doing in the next season, but, like, wow. You took such a cool, laid-back character and just absolutely killed him like that. But we then continue on to my favorite episode of the season, and this is the return of Pegasus. My brother and I have been memeing this guy since the beginning of time. We quote him regularly to this day. It's one of, like, and you could say, like, whatever it is, like, I don't know, you viewer would be like, oh, viewer boy, you know, just like we say that all of the time, and it's been funny for years, man. Okay, so Pegasus returns, Chumlee returns. I hate Chumlee, delicious. I hate him. He's the worst. But Pegasus made it all good, and Shepard ended up firing, well, not necessarily firing both Crowler and Bonaparte. He said, I want you gone, which meant out of the office, but then they were saying they were getting fired and they were getting laid off. So Pegasus ends up offering the job. It's like, hey, you two kind of have to go against each other and to figure out who actually ends up getting a job. They have a really funny match together. I actually don't remember who won. I think Crowler won. I'm almost sure Crowler won. But regardless, it didn't matter because he's like, Pegasus at the end was kind of like, oh, well, it's all about the effort that you put in. Absolutely, you can work for me. So Pegasus gives them a job. They have a pension, better pay. Like, they're all hyped up and happy. And actually, everybody being really happy for Crowler was really wholesome. Like memes aside, like the whole episode was really hilarious. But, you know, Jaden and everybody else actually giving Crowler a hug goodbye when it seemed like he was actually going to take off was really wholesome. And that actually made me feel something for once in the show. Like, I'm not saying like as if I hated the show or anything. It's just like, it never really pulls any emotion out of you. But I'm like, oh, and if Crowler was taken off, that would have been super sad. But then Shepard comes and he's like, what are you talking about? I didn't fire you. And then it gets even funnier because Pegasus is like, oh, so you guys didn't get fired. You don't need a job after all. Why would I take you away from this teaching job that you have where you love your students so much? And just like they had it made where they were about to go work. That entire episode from start to finish was one of my favorites of the entire series. We then had another episode where Jaden tried to get through to Chaz using the Ojama characters. And I didn't really like, that was a little bit sad. I didn't like that Chaz was like, you know, talking down to them the way that he did, but it was obviously not Chaz and they knew it. So like no hard feelings actually done. Shepard also asked Atticus to help free Zane from the darkness, but that dude is a long goner, right? And then he ended up tapping in a Night Shroud, which was very weird. Again, I think they went a little bit edgier than they meant to this season, or like they thought that it was cool, but it didn't end up being that cool. But this is where Cyrus came in, and Cyrus was like, I'm going to do it. This is my time. Jaden ended up sneaking Power Bond into his work, and Cyrus ended up losing anyways, but it was like, that match wasn't nearly as like passionate as they probably meant it to be. But what actually got creepy was because we also had Aster actually finding the D, who had plasma, who the D was the guy who actually ended up killing his father, but his father wasn't actually dead. He was trapped within the plasma, which was disgusting to watch because plasma was like opening his wings and his father was like trapped inside the wings. So what I'm a little bit confused about, because after all of that and Aster like actually finding out who the D was and having to overcome all of that and you know what, beating the D, he had to attack his dad. And I don't know if he actually ended up killing his dad because he's like, it's okay, son, you need to do this. I don't know if Aster ended up actually killing his own father or not, which is really crazy. But we quickly move on to the climax of the season, and this is with both Aster and Jaden, the two that actually can overcome destiny. They want to take on Sartorius. Aster does it, he's unsuccessful. Jaden does it, shocker, he is successful. And I actually like the battle between him and Sartorius, but again, like, the stakes just weren't there. They just weren't. And like we're going to be talking about with all the Dark World stuff, like, the stakes were absolutely there. I don't know what it was. I just did not care for Sartorius, you know? It was a good match. Jaden ended up winning. He got through to Sartorius, defeated the Light, and Sartorius is all happy, you know? Aster ended up saving him where he's like, I always be there for Sartorius. It was all just like one big happy ending, and the Society Light was no more, and we move on. It kind of all came to, I guess, a big halt. Like, there wasn't anything to add. Like, the season just kind of like ended like that. But there is going to be so much to talk about with season 3. The best season, and arguably, like, not only this particular series, but I'm talking about like the entire franchise as a whole. Season 3, I cannot wait to talk about, and look out for that video because we are absolutely going to be doing that, guys. Thank you so much for being here and watching the video. Check out the first season recap that we did over here if you're interested in me diving into that. I liked it a lot better than the season, to be honest with you guys, but it still was phenomenal. I can't wait to see you guys over there. Thank you very much for watching. Take care.